He was already on his feet, card on the check, walking out, when his 7-year-old said 6 words that froze a billionaire mid-step. "But Daddy, she's nice." The blind date he'd written off, late, flustered, green dress, a dragon doodled on David's napkin, suddenly wasn't a mistake. It was a threat to his perfectly guarded life. Does he leave, or sit, and risk everything he's been protecting? Welcome back, legends. If you're seeing this, the algorithm says you've got great taste. Before we start, smash like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a drop. Do me a favor. Comment where you're watching from and the exact time on your clock right now. Share this with one friend who'll love it, and let's roll. Jeremy Hale checked his Rolex for the 5th time. 17 minutes late. The maitre d' hovered nearby. Sympathy hidden behind professional politeness. Around them, the low hum of conversation filled the softly lit restaurant, a place designed for anniversaries and proposals, not blind dates that already felt like bad investments. Across the table, his 7-year-old son David swung his shiny dress shoes and sketched cars on a napkin with a crayon. "This was a mistake," Jeremy muttered under his breath. His sister's voice echoed in his mind. "You work too much, Jeremy. You need someone who makes you laugh, not another merger to manage." He'd argued, of course, but Eva was relentless. And now here he was, sitting in a restaurant that served $12 sparkling water, waiting for a woman he'd never met, while his son turned napkins into racetracks. "Daddy," David said, glancing up with his serious blue eyes. "Is the lady coming?" Jeremy sighed. "Probably not, buddy." He tried to make it sound casual, but guilt pricked his chest. He hated letting David see disappointment, even small ones. Life had already handed them enough of that when Mara died 4 years ago. Since then, Jeremy had mastered control. In business, in parenting, in keeping his emotions buried under impeccable suits and fixed schedules. A late blind date wasn't supposed to crack that armor. The restaurant doors opened again, and Jeremy didn't even bother looking up this time, until David nudged his arm. "Daddy, I think that's her." Jeremy followed his son's gaze. A woman had just stepped in, slightly out of breath, hair tousled by the evening wind. She wore a green dress that shimmered subtly under the amber lights and a cream cardigan slipping from one shoulder. A black purse hung from her arm like a shield. Her eyes scanned the room nervously before landing on him. Relief and panic crossed her face all at once. She hurried toward their table. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was awful, and then I couldn't find parking, and I changed my outfit 4 times because everything suddenly felt wrong. And—" She stopped mid-ramble, exhaled, then offered an embarrassed laugh. "Okay, I'm rambling. I do that when I'm nervous. I'm just going to stop now." Jeremy blinked. He had prepared for elegance, confidence, composure. Not this flustered honesty. David grinned. "You talk a lot." Her cheeks flushed, but she smiled down at him. "I do, especially when I'm nervous." Jeremy stood, offering his hand, his tone clipped but polite. "Jeremy Hale." "Isabella Carter," she said, shaking his hand, her grip warm, surprisingly steady despite the nerves. "Nice to meet you," he said automatically. "And you," she replied, visibly trying to calm herself. "Also, you must think I'm completely disorganized. I swear I'm usually on time." "Well, mostly," David giggled. "You sound like Aunt Eva." Isabella's eyes brightened. "Eva Hale? She's your aunt?" "Yes," David said proudly. "She said you were nice." That earned a soft laugh from Isabella. "Well, I'll do my best to live up to that." Jeremy gestured for her to sit, motioning for the waiter to bring another menu. His irritation hadn't fully faded, but he couldn't deny that her flustered charm was disarming. Still, he needed to keep things measured, controlled, safe. "So," he said once she'd settled, "you know my sister?" "Barely," Isabella admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "We met at a charity event last month. She mentioned you." "Of course she did," Jeremy said dryly. "And before I knew it, she was telling me about your love of architecture and your adorable son, and how you needed to get out more." Isabella made air quotes, then froze. "Oh no, that probably sounded bad. I didn't mean—" Jeremy's lips twitched despite himself. "It's fine." David was back to drawing on his napkin, the tip of his tongue sticking out in concentration. Isabella leaned forward slightly. "That's a pretty cool car. Is it a race car?" David nodded. "Yeah, but I'm still learning how to draw the wheels right. They always look flat." "Well, wheels are tricky," Isabella said. "You have to give them a little shadow underneath, like they're hugging the ground." David's eyes widened. "You draw?" "I do. I illustrate children's books. And sometimes I teach art therapy for kids." Jeremy looked up from his menu, surprised. That wasn't the resume he'd expected. "Art therapy?" "Yes." Her voice softened. "It helps kids express things they can't put into words yet. You'd be amazed what they can tell you with color." David perked up. "Can you draw my car better?" She smiled. "I wouldn't say better. Maybe just a little different." He handed her the napkin eagerly. She sketched quickly, a few bold lines transforming his boxy car into one that seemed to move. "See? It's all in the curve." David's grin was immediate. "That's awesome!" Jeremy couldn't help but watch, not her drawing, but the ease with which she connected with his son. There was no forced sweetness, no performative tone. Just sincerity. Then she glanced at Jeremy's watch, a small almost nervous glance, and his guard rose again. He'd seen that look too many times before. People measuring him, calculating the cost of sitting at his table. Isabella caught his shift instantly. "Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't... I'm terrible at keeping track of time." "Of course," he said lightly, masking the sting in his chest. The waiter arrived with their water and took their orders. The conversation wobbled between polite and awkward. Isabella tried. Jeremy remained reserved. Still, David filled the silence effortlessly, chattering about school, his favorite superheroes, and how his dad designed big glass buildings that look like robot houses. Isabella laughed. "That sounds pretty cool." Jeremy smiled faintly. "Depends who you ask." When dessert menus arrived, Isabella hesitated. "Do you want to share something?" "I make a mean chocolate lava cake, but theirs might be better." "Maybe next time," Jeremy said before he could stop himself. Her eyes flickered with surprise and hope, but he didn't confirm it. Instead, he checked his watch again. Late night, early meeting, too much vulnerability hovering in the air. He needed to end this soon, before the warmth in her eyes did something dangerous, like make him remember what connection felt like. As they waited for the check, Isabella asked David quietly, "So, which drawing should I keep? Yours or mine?" David grinned. "Both." "Good answer," she said, folding the napkin carefully and slipping it into her purse. "For safekeeping." Jeremy's phone buzzed with an email alert. Perfect excuse. He glanced at the screen, then at her. This was nice. "Thank you for coming." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she covered it quickly. "Of course. Thank you for not walking out after my dramatic entrance." Jeremy gave a polite nod, but his eyes softened when David yawned. As they stepped outside into the cool night, he told himself it was just one dinner. No sparks, no promises. But the image of her folding that napkin, like it mattered, wouldn't leave him. He tightened his jaw, tucking the thought away. Keep it short. Keep it safe. He didn't know yet that he'd almost walked away from the best thing that would ever happen to them. Should Jeremy bail or stay? Comment stay or leave. He'd already rehearsed the clean exit in his head. "Thank you for coming. Early morning tomorrow. We should go." When David nudged the candle aside and pushed the napkin toward Isabella like an offering. "Can you make it look fast?" David asked. "Dad says mine looks like it's parked." Jeremy almost said not to bother. Then Isabella leaned in, elbows on the linen like someone unafraid of wrinkling anything that mattered, and the room tilted toward her. "Okay," she murmured, studying the messy oval wheels. "Cars like to lean when they turn. We just have to help yours lean." She grabbed a clean napkin, folded it to make a firmer surface, and drew 2 quick lines, one for the road, one slight diagonal through the car's middle. "This is called the center line. If you tilt it a bit, the body follows. See?" She pinned David's napkin with a fingertip so he could watch both at once. He was watching her. Of course he was. The billionaire with the exact tie knot and the careful smile. But she focused on the boy, his bright, impatient brain thrumming under that neat part in his hair, because that's where the room's temperature really shifted. "Now, wheels," she said lightly. "Not circles. Ellipses. They look like pancakes from the side." She swooped 2 soft ovals, lifted each with a crescent of shadow. "And a little tire shine. Just a whisper." David leaned closer until his nose nearly touched the paper. "Oh, it's like it's leaning." "Exactly," she said. "You're not drawing a car. You're drawing a moment." He shouldn't have felt it, but he did. The edge inside him give a fraction. She wasn't putting on a show for him. She wasn't peeking at the watch again, or at the silent phones, or at the quiet tableau of money this restaurant liked to arrange. She was with David, and the kid was porous to it, absorbing technique as if it were oxygen. "Can it have a dragon on the hood?" David asked, already reaching for a fresh crayon. Isabella's smile went crooked, conspiratorial. "Let's cause some traffic." In 3 strokes, a dragon curled from grill to windshield, a sleek mascot with too many teeth and a tongue like a flame. She didn't take over. She drew around David's lines, leaving space for him to own the fiercest parts. "Breathe," she told herself. "You're late, but you're here. You can still do the one thing you're good at. Make a kid feel seen." The old clinic's smell, glue sticks and sanitizer, rose in her chest. She kept her voice easy. "When I used to run art groups, the kids taught me monsters are just feelings that needed outfits." David snorted. "What outfit is this?" "Clearly," she said deadpan, "this dragon is wearing racing stripes." He laughed loud enough that a couple at the next table glanced over and softened. She stole a look at Jeremy, a tiny crease near his eye, nothing like the boardroom mask. Interest trying to win an argument with control. "Art groups?" he asked, betraying curiosity. She nodded, still watching David draw. "I worked at a children's clinic. We used art to help kids talk without talking. Some feelings don't like eye contact." David glanced up. "Like when Dad has his thinking face?" Isabella didn't look away from David to check if she'd offended. "Like that," she said gently. Jeremy felt the flinch and smoothed it with a sip of water. "You worked there?" "Past tense," she said, and the 2 words sat lightly, like paper hiding a bruise. "Funding cuts. We lost 3 programs in a month. I freelance now. Illustrations pay the rent. Volunteering pays the rest." Her tone wasn't a pitch, not even a complaint, just the weather. He could respect that. David tapped the dragon's snout. "How do I draw fire?" "Triangles that can't decide their size," she said promptly. "Big, small, medium, and always a few that misbehave." They flamed the hood together. The car looked fast enough to leave the napkin behind. "Don't spill your story," she warned herself. "You're not here to earn sympathy. You're here because his sister cornered you beside a tower of profiteroles and said, 'He needs someone who reads to kids out loud.' You said yes because the word yes sometimes drags the rest of your life into the daylight." The waiter returned with plates. She let the conversation rest while David counted dragon teeth like they were victories. When the clink quieted, she turned to Jeremy. "I've seen some of your libraries," she said, careful with the words. "The children's wings are bright without being loud. Someone understood how to lower a window to a kid's height. That kind of attention is rare." Compliment accepted, he thought automatically. And yet something in him bristled. He heard a familiar undertone he'd trained himself to detect. The praise that leads to the ask. "We love your work. Could we get—" He kept his voice neutral. "Design is easy when budgets behave." "Budgets don't behave," she said, smiling sideways. "People make choices." It should have landed as a shared joke. Instead, the old reflex argued. Choice. People ask for it like breathing. Then send the invoice to your conscience. He'd spent 4 years building a moat with rules, so his son never had to learn that lesson the hard way. David interrupted his spiral by blowing pretend smoke from the dragon. "It needs a name." "Fire hazard," Jeremy said, and was surprised when Isabella laughed. "Perfect," she said. "Sir Fire Hazard." He was funny when the stiffness slipped, but he didn't trust himself to be. She knew that posture. Adults at the clinic wore it when they needed to be the strong one. You learn to talk to the shoulders first and the heart later. She reached for her glass and realized her hands were shaking the tiniest bit. "Don't sell. Don't perform. Sit in the chair you brought." So she stayed where the kid had anchored her, the napkin. "You know," she said to David, "some engineers keep sketchbooks. They doodle bridges and engines while they think. If you do that long enough, your brain learns to solve problems before your hands do." David's eyes went comet bright. "Dad designs bridges. Sort of. Buildings that act like bridges." "Do you?" she asked, looking at Jeremy with open curiosity, not awe. He cleared his throat. "Sometimes. When a city asks nicely." "Cities don't ask nicely," she said, and this time his laugh escaped before he could approve it. The waiter appeared with an ill-timed flourish, announcing dessert specials like a trumpet. Isabella reached for her water, bumped the base of the candle, and caught it with fast fingers before wax could spill. "Reflexes," she said, breathless. "You develop them when glitter is a workplace hazard." David grinned at that. But Jeremy had already noticed how her composure wobbled after the save. She was nervous again, and he didn't know why that tightened something in his ribs. Maybe because nerves were honest. You can't counterfeit a hand that shakes and still reaches. She raised her glass, hesitated, then went for it. A toast?" Her smile wobbled, then steadied on David. "To brave boys who try ellipses, and patient dads who let dinners be what they are." The line was true and awkward, and absolutely not rehearsed. It also rang something inside him he didn't want rung. He felt the eyes of 3 tables away, imagined the story they'd tell. Billionaire on a date with a woman in a cardigan. How quaint. The old defense clicked into place. He reached for his phone as it buzzed. An email. A calendar ping. Salvation. "Excuse me," he said, already half-standing. "I need to take this." Of course he did. She covered her wince by taking a sip, then set the glass down carefully, as if gentleness could rewind anything. David studied her face with the unblinking interest of a kid who hadn't yet learned to pretend. "Are you in trouble?" he asked softly. "Only with my nerves," she said, pushing a smile to the surface. "Want to help me breathe like a dragon who's trying not to start a fire?" He nodded solemnly. She taught him a slow inhale, a slower exhale, one hand on his belly to feel the rise and fall. He followed, mirroring her cadence until the fizzing in her chest settled. "Better?" he asked. "Much," she said. "You're good at this." "My dad says breathing fixes 90% of problems," David confided. "The other 10% is snacks." Isabella huffed a laugh. "Accurate." He didn't go far. just outside the soft perimeter of candlelight to the shadowed hall by the restrooms. No call, no emergency. Only the hum of blood in his ears, and the hard, simple fact that something about her toast had nudged a door he kept locked. Let dinners be what they are. He'd curated outcomes since the night the one outcome he wanted most had been taken on a slick, unlit curve. You don't forget the smell of rain inside a hospital corridor. You don't forget the tiny hand you have to teach how to sleep again. He stared at the black screen of his phone, then at his reflection in it, a man who could steer skylines and still flinch at a woman raising a glass to his son. Back at the table, Isabella was teaching David to breathe like a dragon who didn't want to burn the world down. He could go. He could make reasonable his alibi and walk out intact. He slid the phone into his pocket and drew a breath that reached his ribs. Then, as he stepped back toward the table, a thought. If she's angling, you'll see it. If she's not, you're about to find out. He didn't know yet which truth would sting more. Jeremy reached the table with the practiced calm of a man returning from a crisis that didn't exist. Isabella looked up, smiled tentative but game. David held out the napkin like a certificate. "Sir Fire Hazard is ready," his son announced. Jeremy set a hand on the chair, deciding in silence whether to sit or to end it clean. And that's when the maitre d' reappeared with the check already tucked into a leather folder, as if the night had made up its mind before Jeremy had a chance to. Jeremy stepped into the hallway's cool air, the muted hum of the restaurant fading behind him. The wall sconces glowed a soft amber, washing the narrow corridor in light too gentle for how sharp his thoughts felt. He didn't need the break. He needed distance. From the laughter that wasn't his. From the way Isabella's toast had landed like a paper airplane that almost made it. From the risk of liking her just a little too quickly. He loosened his collar and let out a slow, uneven breath. Rain. It always came back to rain. It had been raining the night Mara died. Slick road, wrong turn, headlights too bright, and the sound of shattering that never really left his ears. Even now, years later, he could still feel the tremor in his chest when thunder rolled too close. That was the night he'd promised himself to build life like architecture. No weak beams, no open ceilings, no space left for collapse. This date, this evening, was already a crack in the plan. Jeremy rubbed a hand over his jaw, then straightened his cuffs, the motion grounding him. He'd go back in, finish politely, pay the check, and drive David home. Simple. Controlled. The kind of clean ending he was good at. When he returned to the table, Isabella and David were giggling quietly over something drawn on the napkin. The dragon now had sunglasses. David's cheeks were pink from laughter. Jeremy felt an unexpected sting behind his ribs. That sound, David laughing like that, used to belong to weekends that felt impossible now. He cleared his throat. Isabella looked up instantly, smile faltering just slightly, the way someone braces for a verdict. "I went ahead and asked for the check," he said, slipping back into his seat. Her face changed. Barely, but enough. "Of course," she said softly. Thank you for dinner, and for tolerating my crash landing. It's fine." There was a pause. She swallowed, eyes flicking toward David and then back to him. "You must have to do this sort of thing a lot." Jeremy frowned. "Dinner?" "No, I mean," she gestured vaguely. "Living at that level, running a company, raising a kid, managing everything. It must be hard." Her tone was sincere, but the words pricked anyway. At that level. He'd heard that before, usually right before a pitch, a proposal, or a favor disguised as admiration. He felt the shudders slide down inside him. "It's manageable," he said, too curtly. "Oh, I didn't mean—" Isabella started, flustered now, her fingers fidgeting with the napkin she'd folded earlier. "I wasn't trying to—" He pushed his chair back, letting the movement end it for her. "It's all right." David blinked up at him. "We're leaving?" "Yes, buddy." But we didn't eat dessert yet, David said, his voice puzzled. Next time, Jeremy said, reaching for the check. Isabella's lips parted like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. She just sat there, the candlelight flickering across her face. Half apology, half resignation. Jeremy placed his card down, nodded to the waiter, and stood. And then it happened. David's small voice, clear and certain, cut through the hum of the restaurant. But Daddy, she's nice. The air thinned around them. Jeremy froze. Every table sound, cutlery, laughter, murmured talk, seemed to dull, as if even the restaurant held its breath. Isabella looked at David in surprise, eyes softening with something almost maternal. Jeremy turned to his son. What? She's nice, David said again, slower this time, as if explaining something obvious. You said people show who they are when they don't think you're watching. She was nice the whole time. The words hit their mark, gentle and devastating. For a moment, Jeremy saw Mara in the way David's chin lifted, brave, innocent, stubborn about what mattered. He let out a breath that didn't sound like his own. Isabella shifted slightly, voice quiet but steady. He's a good judge of character. Jeremy looked at her. She didn't look triumphant or smug or expectant. Just open. He sat back down, slowly. The waiter blinked in confusion, but discreetly retreated with the check. Okay, Jeremy said after a moment, tone neutral. No dessert, but one more conversation. David grinned. Isabella relaxed a fraction. Jeremy turned to her. You said you work with children's books, he said. What's your favorite one to read aloud? Isabella looked caught off guard. My favorite? Yes? She smiled, a little shyly this time. It changes, but lately, The Storm and the Sparrow. It's about a little bird who gets stuck in a storm. He keeps thinking he needs to fly higher to escape it, but the wind just gets worse. In the end, he finds a hollow in a tree, waits it out, and realizes he didn't need to fight the storm. He just needed to rest. Her voice softened as she spoke, the rhythm slipping naturally into story cadence. Warm, low, musical. David leaned in, listening as if it were bedtime. Do you do the voices too? Jeremy asked before he could stop himself. Isabella laughed. Only when I want to embarrass myself. The sparrow sounds like a sneeze with wings. David giggled. Do it. No way. Please. She sighed dramatically, then held a hand to her throat and chirped. I'm not afraid of rain. Achoo! David dissolved into laughter again. Even Jeremy's lips twitched. The waiter reappeared with the receipt. Jeremy waved him off for now. He studied Isabella as she helped David add a few more lines to the dragon sketch. Her hair falling slightly forward, cardigan slipping again, her posture easy but alert. No pretense. No rehearsed charm. Just someone who had learned to listen for the small sounds in a noisy world. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. The quiet, dangerous warmth of being disarmed. When the laughter faded, Jeremy glanced at David. Buddy, you need to wash your hands before we go. Okay. Jeremy looked at Isabella. Would you mind taking him? The restroom's just down that hallway. Her eyebrows lifted, surprised. Of course. David jumped from his chair, clutching the napkin with their dragon masterpiece. Don't let him negotiate for dessert, Jeremy said dryly. Got it, she replied, smiling as she followed David through the crowd. Jeremy watched them go, the small boy weaving confidently ahead, the woman in the green dress steady behind him, and for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar ripple through him. Not fear, not control, something softer, something that felt almost like relief. He leaned back, the candle flickering between half-lit reflections on the glass, and told himself he'd give it one more hour. Just one. 1 hour to see where this might go. But deep down, he already knew. 1 hour wouldn't be enough. If David hadn't spoken up, Jeremy would have walked away forever. What do you think? Was fate in that moment, or just a child's honesty? The restroom hallway smelled faintly of lavender and expensive soap, comforting and intimidating all at once. Isabella pressed a palm against her chest, feeling the flutter there, as if her heart had decided to audition for percussion. She'd done it again, talked too much, tripped over her own sincerity, probably offended a billionaire with a toast about patience and dragons. Classic Isabella Carter. Turn an ordinary dinner into an emotional art project. Do no harm, she whispered under her breath, her old clinic mantra. When you're not sure if you helped, at least make sure you didn't hurt. David came out of the restroom grinning, hands damp. Your dragon sneeze was funny. She smiled, crouching a little so they were eye level. You think so? I was worried I scared the waiter. He giggled. You're not scary. Daddy just doesn't laugh a lot. But he likes you. Her throat tightened. He's just tired. Grown-ups get good at it. David tilted his head, like he was filing that away for later. Then a soft sound interrupted. The quiet sob of a child echoing from farther down the hallway. A little girl, maybe 5, sat near the women's restroom door, tears tracking through the powdered sugar on her cheeks. A man stood helplessly nearby, holding a small pink jacket. Her mom's in the stall, he said, flustered. She dropped her dessert and... I got it, Isabella said gently. She knelt beside the girl, grabbing a paper towel from the counter and folding it into a small triangle. This, she said solemnly, is Mr. Fluffy, the bravest napkin in the world. The girl hiccuped, momentarily distracted. He doesn't look fluffy. That's because he's undercover. Dragons tried to steal his frosting powers. Isabella gave the towel a squeaky puppet voice. But I said not today, dragons. The girl giggled mid-sniffle. Now, Isabella continued, Mr. Fluffy's superpower is breathing. You in? The little girl nodded, mirroring her as she inhaled slow and deep, then exhaled through her mouth. The tremor in her shoulders softened, her face easing back into calm. There, Isabella said, smiling. You fixed him. He's brave again. The girl reached out and patted the paper puppet. Thank you. Any time. Isabella handed Mr. Fluffy over like a sacred relic. When she stood, David was watching with wide eyes. You do that a lot? Used to, she said. It works better than saying, don't cry. He nodded seriously. Can I try it next time I get mad? Only if you name your paper towel something cool, like Sir Fire Hazard Jr. David laughed, holding the napkin sketch tight against his chest as they walked back to the table. Jeremy looked up as they returned. For a flicker of a second, his expression wasn't guarded. It was relieved. Everything okay? All good, Isabella said, sliding into her seat. We rescued a paper towel. He blinked, unsure if she was serious. David jumped in to explain. She made a puppet. The girl stopped crying. Jeremy's gaze softened slightly. You made a puppet out of a napkin? I multitask, she said, trying to play it light. Dinner arrived. Roasted chicken for her, steak for Jeremy, fries for David. The mood had changed. Looser somehow, as if David's laughter had unlocked the table's gravity. So, Jeremy said, slicing into his steak, you said you used to work with kids full-time? Mm-hmm. I ran art therapy programs at Brightleaf Children's Clinic. What happened? She shrugged, keeping her tone casual. Budget cuts. We were low priority when the new board came in. I freelanced for a bit, illustrating storybooks, and kept volunteering when I could. David munched on fries. You draw for books? Sometimes, she said. Mostly for kids who love color more than lines. I paint murals too. Once I filled a whole classroom wall with clouds that had secret faces hidden inside them. Cool, David said, eyes wide. Did the kids find them? All but one, she said with a wink. I hid that one for myself. Jeremy's knife paused mid-cut. That's creative. Or lazy, she teased. Depends on your perspective. He smiled at that. Barely, but it counted. David was on a roll now. Can you paint a bridge? Daddy loves bridges. He built one once. I didn't build it, Jeremy corrected. I designed it. Still counts, David said. He said bridges are like promises. You have to make them strong so people don't fall. Isabella looked at Jeremy, surprised by the metaphor. That's beautiful. He looked slightly embarrassed. It's an engineer thing. It's a poet thing, she said softly. For a moment, silence lingered, but not the awkward kind. The restaurant's hum filled the gaps, clinking glasses, a low jazz track, candlelight flickering between them. She could almost imagine this as a normal dinner, not one carefully arranged by his well-meaning sister. Not a night she'd spent apologizing for being human. David started sketching again, brow furrowed in concentration. Isabella leaned over. New design? Wind engine, he said proudly. If you put blades under a bridge, the cars make wind that charges batteries. Brilliant, Isabella said. I'd hire you. Jeremy chuckled, warmth creeping into his voice. He's been obsessed with renewable energy since his science fair last year. David grinned. We made a fan that lit up a Lego house. She gasped theatrically. A house powered by car wind? I'd buy that patent right now. David's grin widened. I'll sell it for 2 desserts. Negotiations begin, she said, laughing. Jeremy shook his head, but his eyes lingered on Isabella longer this time. Curious, uncertain, almost grateful. By the time the plates cleared, conversation had turned easy. Stories layered over stories. Isabella's clouds, David's engines, Jeremy's bridge metaphors. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this, the feeling of building something invisible at a table, word by word. When they finally stood to leave, the maitre d' handed Jeremy his coat with practiced elegance. Outside, the air was cool, the city hum muted by distance. David tugged at Isabella's hand. Thanks for the dragon. Thanks for the bridge, she said, smiling. Jeremy offered a polite nod. Thank you for dinner. She nodded back. Thank you for not walking out before dessert. His lips twitched. I almost did. I noticed. Something flickered between them. Not quite laughter, not quite regret. David climbed into the back seat of the sleek black sedan, waiting at the curb. Bye, Miss Isabella. Bye, David, she called softly. Jeremy opened the car door, then hesitated. You're good with kids. Years of practice, she said. And a little empathy goes a long way. He nodded once, a small concession. Good night. Good night, Jeremy. The door closed, muffling the soft hum of the engine as the car pulled away. Isabella exhaled, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. The night air bit at her cheeks, grounding her. Maybe he'd forget her by morning. Maybe that was fine. She started walking, heels clicking against the pavement. But as she reached into her purse for her keys, her fingers brushed against something folded. A napkin. David's napkin. The first one. The one with his wobbly car sketch before the dragon was born. He must have slipped it into her bag by accident. She unfolded it under the streetlight, smiling at the uneven lines. The car tilted slightly to one side, like it was trying to move forward but wasn't sure how. She took out a pen. Slowly, she added the dragon back in, sleek, confident, ready for flight. She shaded the wheels, signed her initials in the corner, and whispered, There, now it's going somewhere. For a long moment, she just stood there under the city's silver glow, holding the napkin like a secret promise. Then she tucked it back into her bag, already planning what to do next. She'd send it back, not as an apology, as a thank you. Because sometimes, even the briefest moments deserve to be finished properly. Would you have sent the napkin back or kept it as a memory? Comment below what you think Isabella should do. The envelope arrived mid-morning, hand-delivered, no return address. Jeremy's assistant set it neatly on his desk beside a stack of architectural renderings, murmuring, "It's for you, sir. Personal delivery." He barely looked up. "Thank you." He was halfway through reviewing a new proposal for a library expansion when the handwriting caught his eye. Fluid, unpretentious, looping like someone who didn't rush. He turned it over. No company logo, no seal, just his name written cleanly across the front. He tore it open with the edge of a ruler. Inside lay a folded napkin, crisp despite the faint crayon marks. The dragon was back, fully formed this time, curling protectively around the sleek car David had drawn. Its scales shimmered in pencil shading, its eye mischievous. In the corner, just below David's initials, someone had written, "He sees in motion. Don't let him stop drawing." I. Jeremy stared at the words until they blurred. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected her. Not after the awkward toast, the aborted exit, the polite goodnight. Not after he'd told himself it was just one evening. But there it was, proof of something delicate, precise, and, if he was honest, kind. He leaned back in his chair, the city stretching in glass reflections behind him, and exhaled slowly. That night, he showed David. The boy's eyes widened. "She finished it!" "She did," Jeremy said quietly, handing him the napkin. "She made the dragon real." David studied it like a treasure map. "Look, Daddy, she even made the tires shiny. She's so good at this." Jeremy smiled faintly. "She is." David looked up. "We should say thank you." "It's just a napkin, buddy." David frowned. "No, it's not. She said I see in motion. That means she noticed. People don't notice things if they don't care." Jeremy didn't have an answer to that. His son's logic, simple and devastating, sat heavy in the quiet apartment. Finally he said, "All right, we'll say thank you." David grinned, already planning. "Can we draw something for her?" "Let's start with words," Jeremy said, half smiling. His sister Eva stopped by Hale HQ the next morning, armed with coffee and unsolicited opinions. "You're unusually distracted," she said, leaning against his desk. "What happened? Did the city cancel your zoning permit, or did my matchmaking miracle actually work?" Jeremy groaned. "You're relentless." "Because I care," she said sweetly. "And because it's fun watching you act human again. So, how was she?" "She was—" He hesitated, searching for a neutral word. "Nice." Eva's grin sharpened. "Nice. That's practically a sonnet coming from you." "Don't start." "Did David like her?" "He did," he admitted. "Too much, maybe." "Ah." Eva folded her arms. "And that scares you?" He looked away. "He's been through enough loss. I'm not letting him attach to someone who might vanish next week." "Kind isn't the same as safe, Jeremy," she said softly. "You know that." He didn't answer. Eva tilted her head, catching sight of the napkin lying beside his laptop. "She drew this?" "Yes." Her expression softened. "It's beautiful." He picked up the note again, fingers brushing the ink. "Don't let him stop drawing." The words had weight, not the kind that pushed down, but the kind that anchored. Eva leaned closer. "So, what's your next move?" "There isn't one." "Liar," she said cheerfully, and left him to his thoughts. By the afternoon, the quiet of his office felt heavy. He typed, deleted, then retyped a dozen drafts of the same email before settling on something simple. Subject: Thank you. Isabella. The drawing arrived today. David was thrilled. And you were right. He hasn't stopped sketching since. Thank you for finishing what he started. Jeremy Hale. P.S. Do you ever teach workshops? He hovered over send for a moment before clicking it, already regretting it. It felt like crossing a line he wasn't sure existed. The reply came that evening, faster than he expected. Jeremy, I do, sort of. I volunteer at a community art room on Thursdays. It's open to anyone. No sign-ups, no pressure, just messy tables and free crayons. You and David would fit right in. Isabella. He stared at the email for a long minute, then smiled despite himself. No pressure, just messy tables. He could almost hear her voice saying it. Warm, unpolished, human. Thursday came faster than he'd planned. David had been talking about it since breakfast. His excitement barely contained. Do you think we'll get to paint dragons again? Maybe she'll show me how to make lightning look real. Jeremy smiled from behind his coffee mug. Maybe, but remember, this isn't a class. It's a workshop. You help others too. David nodded solemnly. I can help with crayons. The day blurred by in meetings and phone calls. By the time he checked his watch that evening, the sky had turned a deep, moody gray. The weather app blinked with a storm warning. Heavy rain expected after 7 o'clock p.m. Drive carefully. Of course. He debated canceling. He hated storms. But David was already standing by the door, clutching his sketchbook and the finished napkin drawing. Ready? Jeremy glanced at the rain-dark horizon outside his penthouse window. Clouds were rolling in, low and heavy, flashing with distant light. Yeah, he said finally. Let's go. The city streets shimmered under the first drops as they pulled out of the garage. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm, and David hummed softly beside him, flipping through his sketches. Jeremy tried not to think about the coincidence, the storm, the timing, the way life had a sense of humor he didn't always appreciate. He told himself it was just an art night, just a thank you, nothing more. But deep down, something else whispered, maybe it's a beginning. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, watching the first flash of lightning split the clouds. They'd be careful this time. They'd drive slow. And maybe, just maybe, this storm would lead somewhere new. The storm rolled in before the car even turned the corner onto East Ridge Avenue. Rain lashed the windshield. Streetlights smeared into molten streaks across the glass, and thunder rumbled low, like the city itself was exhaling. Jeremy flicked on the wipers again, but they barely kept up. Beside him, David pressed his forehead to the window. Whoa, it's like the sky's making music. Jeremy smiled faintly. A loud one. It's okay, David said, unbothered. We're still going, right? He hesitated, just long enough to remember Mara's accident, the wet road, the headlights that never stopped coming. His fingers tightened on the wheel. But then he saw David's reflection in the glass, hopeful, certain. Yeah, he said, we're going. The community art center looked like a lantern in the storm. Soft yellow lights spilling out the windows, flickering every few seconds as the power threatened to quit. Inside, the air buzzed with noise, children laughing, paintbrushes clinking in jars, rain hammering the roof like applause. Isabella Carter stood in the middle of it all, barefoot now, shoes abandoned near the door, directing kids with calm efficiency. Okay, battery lamps over here. Team Crayon, you've got the coloring corner. Paper towers, who's got tape? A group of volunteers scrambled to follow. She smiled at a small boy struggling with scissors and crouched beside him, guiding his hands gently. Cut toward the dragon's tail, not its face. Dragons get very offended. The boy giggled. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into half-darkness. Someone gasped. It's all right, Isabella called. We'll make our own light. She grabbed a flashlight, set it under a paper cup, and instantly a soft glow filled the table. See? Shadow lamps. Now the dragons look even scarier. The tension melted into laughter. Jeremy and David stepped through the doorway, dripping water onto the tile. "Sorry we're late," Jeremy said. "Traffic and rain," David finished cheerfully, shaking out his hair like a dog. Isabella looked up, eyes bright despite the dimness. "You made it." Jeremy nodded, trying not to stare. She was in jeans and a paint-splattered apron, hair tied up messily, a streak of blue near her temple. She looked nothing like the flustered woman from their dinner. This was someone entirely at home in chaos. David darted ahead toward a table stacked with cardboard and glue guns. "Can I help?" "Absolutely," Isabella said, handing him a pair of child-safe scissors. "We're building bridges for the art fair tomorrow." "This one needs support beams." Jeremy's chest tightened at the word. Bridges. He lingered by the doorway, unsure what to do with his hands. Isabella caught his hesitation. "You can stay, you know," she said lightly. "We always need more tall people to reach the tape." "Tall people, huh? And people who can keep kids from gluing themselves to the table." "Ah, a specialized skill set." She smiled. "You look like a quick learner." He found himself laughing, quietly, before following her inside. David teamed up with a shy boy whose cardboard structure leaned like a tired tree. "It keeps falling," the boy mumbled. "That's okay," David said. "My dad says every bridge starts out wobbly." He steadied one side while the boy glued the other, explaining crossbeams and balance like he was teaching a class. Jeremy stood back, heart twisting as he watched, his son's small hands moving with the same focus he once had when sketching blueprints late into the night. Beside him, Isabella whispered, "He's good at leading." Jeremy nodded. "He gets that from his mom." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Isabella didn't pry, didn't fill the silence with pity. She just nodded, eyes soft. Then she said, "She must have been amazing." "She was," he said simply. The storm growled outside, but inside, the sound was muted. Paper rustling, whispers of laughter, the smell of paint and rain-soaked air blending into something strangely peaceful. A girl in a pink hoodie shivered at one of the tables, rubbing her arms. Isabella frowned. "Hey, sweetheart, cold?" The girl nodded. Without thinking, Jeremy shrugged out of his jacket, but before he could move, Isabella reached for her own cardigan, soft, cream-colored, already damp from earlier. She draped it around the girl's shoulders. "There, warmth level, toast." The girl giggled, clutching it close. A gust of wind rattled the windows. Jeremy moved to help adjust the blinds, and that's when he saw the leak. Water was dripping from the ceiling, right onto the drying artwork laid out on a table. "Isabella," he called. She turned and froze. "Oh no." Kids scrambled to rescue their pieces, but the leak widened, a fat drop landing squarely on a painted sunburst. The color bled instantly. "Not tonight," she muttered, scanning the room. "Where's the tarp? Someone grab towels." Jeremy was already there, pulling the table aside, catching the corner before the water spread. "Over there," she said, pointing toward a stack of supplies. He grabbed the tarp, unfolded it, and together they maneuvered it above the drying rack, anchoring it with tape and sheer will. For a few seconds, they were both under it, close enough to feel the heat of her breath, smell the faint citrus of her shampoo beneath the scent of rain. "Teamwork," she said, breathless, pressing a hand to the tarp's edge. "More like structural emergency," he replied, taping another corner. "You'd know." Their hands brushed, hers cold from the storm, his warm from effort. Neither pulled away. Outside, thunder cracked like applause again. 15 minutes later, the crisis was contained. The tarp held, the projects were safe, and the kids were back to their chaos, unbothered, resilient. David proudly unveiled his finished bridge, a lopsided but functional structure covered in painted scales. "It's a dragon bridge," he explained. "It protects people when it rains." Isabella smiled. That's brilliant, David. Jeremy looked down at the makeshift bridge and felt something uncoil in his chest. Protection and courage, built from paper and glue. Maybe that was the point. Maybe all strong things started fragile. When the kids began packing up, Isabella finally exhaled, leaning against the wall. I can't believe we survived that. You did more than survive, Jeremy said. You turned a blackout into an art show. She laughed. You helped. I followed orders. Rare skill for a boss, he grinned. Don't tell my staff. Their eyes met. For a second, the noise faded. The kids' chatter, the rain, the hum of backup lights. Just the two of them, standing in the soft chaos they'd kept from falling apart. Then Isabella glanced up at the ceiling. We should check that leak again before it floods. He nodded, still smiling. Right. Because who needs romance when you have plumbing emergencies? Exactly, she said, grabbing the roll of tape again. But hey, at least it's a start. As they stretched the tarp tighter, another gust of wind rattled the building. The rain grew heavier, drumming a wild rhythm above them. The storm hadn't finished yet, and neither had they. If you were in that stormy art room, would you help save the kids' art, or just enjoy the chaos? Comment below. Team Tarps, or Team Dragons. The storm finally broke near midnight. Rain softened to a hush against the windows of the art room, and the city beyond the fogged glass shimmered, cleansed, reborn. The fluorescent lights had long given up, replaced by paper lanterns and battery lamps that bathed everything in a tender amber glow. Children had been picked up one by one until only 3 remained. David, a sleepy boy with blue paint on his cheek, and Isabella, still barefoot, hair damp, cardigan drying over a chair. She was stirring cocoa in a dented pot they kept for winter nights, humming softly to herself. Jeremy sat nearby, coat sleeves rolled to his elbows, helping the last boy tape his project back together. It was quieter now, gentler. When the final child was collected, the room exhaled. The silence felt like something sacred. Stay for cocoa? Isabella asked, pouring the last of it into mismatched mugs. Jeremy hesitated, then nodded. 1 cup. She smiled. I'll pretend I believe you mean that. David was sprawled on the floor nearby, sketchbook open, tongue between his teeth as he drew by lantern light. Isabella handed Jeremy his mug, fingers brushing his for a heartbeat. Still warm, she said. He nodded, taking a sip. You handled all that like it was nothing. She laughed softly. It wasn't nothing. I'm just good at pretending calm until my hands stop shaking. You didn't look scared. I was. But kids read faces like open books, so I learned to write quieter. Jeremy studied her. How she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear. How her voice softened at the edges when she talked about children. He realized he hadn't felt this kind of stillness in years. After a pause, he asked, Why did you really leave art therapy? Her smile dimmed, not fading, just folding inward. The official reason? Budget cuts, she said. The real one was Liam. He leaned in, listening. He was 6, she said quietly. Leukemia, bright, funny, always drawing doors. Not doors that existed, doors in places where they shouldn't be. Walls, ceilings, windows that opened into nowhere. She swallowed. He told me, if you draw a door, it means there's still a way out. The lantern light flickered across her face, and Jeremy felt something tighten in his chest. When he passed, she continued, I couldn't walk into that room again. The walls felt full of locked doors, so I left before I forgot why I started. Jeremy didn't speak right away. He wasn't sure he could. Then he said softly, You didn't run. You just needed a different kind of light. She looked at him then, really looked. And you? You run from anything lately? He smiled faintly. Constantly. Want to tell me which door you drew shut? He hesitated. The question was gentle, but it cut clean. Mara, he said finally. My wife. Her name still hurt to say. Not like a wound. More like a scar that tugged when the weather changed. She died in a car accident when David was 4. It was raining that night. Isabella's hand tightened around her mug. He doesn't remember much, Jeremy continued. Which I used to think was a blessing. Now I think it's the reason I'm afraid. Afraid of what? That he'll forget how to love openly, or worse, remember, and lose it again. The air between them felt charged, like the faint aftershock of lightning. Isabella set her mug down. He hasn't forgotten. You can see it every time he looks at you. He exhaled, slow. You think? I know, she said. You just have to let him keep drawing doors. For a long moment, they didn't speak. The rain outside whispered against the roof, softer now, like applause fading into memory. Jeremy's gaze lingered on her hands, the way she rubbed her thumb along the rim of her cup, nervous and steady at once. He didn't mean to reach out, but he did. Just lightly, his fingers brushed hers on the table. She didn't pull away. Her eyes lifted to his, brown meeting gray, a current of warmth sparking between them. And for a heartbeat, just one, they leaned closer. But then, ta-da! David's voice shattered the stillness. He held up his sketchbook proudly, beaming. Look what I made! They both blinked, startled back into the room. The drawing showed 3 figures under a giant umbrella, rain falling all around. A man, a woman, and a boy, all smiling. That's us, David announced. You, me, and Miss Isabella. See? The umbrella's so big, it keeps everyone dry, even the dragon. Sure enough, in the corner, a small cartoon dragon peeked out, grinning beneath the canopy. Isabella's throat tightened. That's beautiful, David. Jeremy cleared his throat. You've been busy. Uh-huh. David yawned, rubbing his eyes. It's our bridge umbrella. No one gets wet here. He slid onto the bench beside them, half asleep within seconds, sketchbook still open across his lap. Isabella tucked it gently away. He's something else. He is, Jeremy murmured, brushing a strand of hair from David's forehead. And so are you. She smiled, quiet and unsure. Thank you for letting me borrow your evening. He met her gaze. You didn't borrow it. You rebuilt it. Her heart stuttered at the words, but she didn't answer. The lantern light flickered once more, painting soft halos around them. Jeremy looked down at his son, then back at her. The decision came out before he could think too long. David's school is hosting an art fair next week, he said. They need volunteer judges. Would you? She blinked. Me? You're the most qualified person I know. Qualified for finger paint chaos? For finding meaning in it, he said. Her lips curved. I'd love to. Outside, thunder rumbled one last time. Faint, far away, like a door closing gently instead of slamming. And for the first time in years, Jeremy didn't feel the urge to leave before it opened again. Saturday morning dawned bright and rain-washed, the kind of morning that smelled like clean pavement and second chances. Jeremy pulled into the school parking lot just as a cluster of parents crossed the walkway carrying trays of muffins and projects still drying in their hands. David was in the back seat, hugging his model bridge like it was made of gold. Do you think the judges will like it? He asked. I think they'll see how much work you put in, Jeremy said, smiling into the rearview mirror. David nodded solemnly. Miss Isabella's going to be there, right? She said she wouldn't miss it. At that, David grinned, already unbuckling before the car had fully stopped. Jeremy couldn't blame him. Even he had been counting the days. The school gymnasium was transformed, sunlight bouncing off streamers, tables lined with art pieces in every color imaginable. Paper sculptures, clay animals, painted jars. The air smelled faintly of glue and oranges. And there, in the center of it all, was Isabella. She wore a pale yellow blouse under a denim jacket, her hair loosely pinned back, a pencil tucked behind her ear. She knelt to eye level with each child, offering the kind of praise that didn't sound rehearsed. "I love how you used space here," she told a girl, showing her a crayon galaxy. "You made the stars breathe." Another kid shyly showed her a collage of mismatched shapes. Isabella smiled. "You made your mistakes into design. That's art." Jeremy stood for a moment, just watching. It struck him again, the difference between people who performed kindness and those who lived it. Isabella's warmth wasn't strategy. It was instinct. "Jeremy!" He turned to see Evelyn Cross, one of the school's board donors, approaching in a cloud of perfume and pearls. "Lovely to see you," she purred, brushing rain from her sleeve. "You're looking well. How's Hale Design these days?" "Busy," he said lightly. "Of course." Her gaze slid toward Isabella. "I didn't realize the event had volunteers." The pause was sharp as glass. "Charming, really?" Jeremy caught the flicker in Isabella's smile, that subtle tightening around the eyes before she looked away. "Evelyn," he said, tone even. "Isabella helped organize this entire fair. Without her, none of this would be standing." Evelyn blinked, surprised. "Well, that's admirable." Then she recovered her social armor. "You'll have to join us for the gala next month, Jeremy. The foundation could use more visionaries like you." "Maybe," he said, and his gaze didn't leave Isabella's. Evelyn followed his eyes and smiled, brittle. "Ah, I see. Well, enjoy the crafts." She drifted away. Isabella exhaled softly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Her eyes lifted to his. "Thank you." Jeremy gave a small shrug. "She was out of line. You just surprised me, that's all. You usually keep your armor on tighter." He smirked. "You're assuming I'm not wearing it right now." She grinned, tilting her head. "Maybe it's just transparent today." David's project sat near the center table. A model bridge made from recycled straws, thread, and paper. Beneath it, he'd written in careful block letters, "So no one ever falls again." When the judges announced honorable mention, David's name echoed through the gym. His face lit up. Jeremy clapped loud enough to startle the nearest parent. "That's my guy." David jogged up to collect his ribbon, grinning ear to ear. When he returned, he whispered, "It's not first place, but I don't even care." Jeremy smiled, pride swelling quietly. "That's what growing up looks like." Isabella crouched beside David, tapping the ribbon. "That bridge will hold more than any first-place one ever could." David blushed. "Thanks, Miss Isabella." Cleanup came faster than expected. Streamers drooped, glitter coated the floor, and volunteers stacked chairs while sunlight slanted through the high windows. Jeremy lingered by the art table, collecting leftover brushes, watching Isabella help a few remaining kids label their projects. When the last family left, she stood, rubbing her back. "Long day," he said. "Worth it." She smiled tiredly. "The best days usually are." He hesitated. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the quiet. "Isabella, about that night at dinner, I misread you." Her brows lifted slightly. "Oh? I thought you were nervous because of me." "Or because of the name Hale. I thought you cared about all the wrong things." "And now?" He took a breath. "Now I see you were just trying to be kind." She smiled faintly. "Kindness isn't always graceful." "No," he said softly. "But it's rare, and it's real." They stood there, a heartbeat too close, between drying paint and the soft rustle of paper banners. Jeremy felt the air shift, the calm before something honest. "So," he said, "no fancy restaurants, no PR smiles. How about dinner again? Just us. And David, if he promises not to critique my table manners." Her laugh came out quiet but bright. "Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Hale?" "I think I am." "I think I'd say yes," she said, smiling. For a moment, neither moved. Just eyes meeting in that fragile, hopeful space where something new begins. Then her phone rang. She blinked. Startled. "Sorry, 1 second." She answered, turning slightly away. "Hello? This is she?" "Wait, what?" Jeremy caught the shift in her tone. Shock, disbelief, then dawning awe. When she hung up, she pressed a hand to her chest. "That was the clinic." "The one you used to work for?" She nodded, eyes wide. "They're reopening a small program. They want me to lead the pilot." Jeremy's heart lifted, then immediately dropped. "That's incredible," he said carefully. "But it sounds like a lot." "It is," she whispered. "Classes, assessments. It'd change my whole schedule." David ran up, still holding his ribbon. "What happened?" Isabella smiled, dazed. "Something good, I think." Jeremy met her gaze across the noise, across the sunlight breaking through the tall windows. He didn't know what it meant yet, whether this was the beginning of something or the start of goodbye. But the look in her eyes said one thing clearly. She'd found her door again. Would you take the dream job, even if it risked a new love? Comment below, chase the door, or choose the heart. 3 months had passed since the art fair, and the place was alive again. Not with stormlight this time, but with laughter, pencil shavings, and the hum of something hopeful. Isabella stood in the center of it all, clipboard in hand, her green dress, the same one she'd worn the night they met, swishing as she moved between tables. The pilot art therapy program had launched 2 weeks earlier, funded quietly by the Hale Foundation. Jeremy had agreed only on one condition, that his name stay off the banners. "This stays about the kids," Isabella had told him when they'd first discussed it. "Not the donors." He'd smiled. "Then I'll fund it quietly." And he had. The check came without signatures, the supplies without ceremony. Now, children painted doors where there were none, bright red, yellow, turquoise ones on recycled cardboard. Each one a small promise. Isabella walked past a boy drawing a rocket through a storm cloud and smiled. "Doors can fly too, you know." He grinned. "Mine's going to space." She laughed. "Then make sure it has windows." Across the room, Jeremy leaned against the doorway, watching her. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He wasn't here as a benefactor today, just as a man who had finally learned to show up without fixing everything. David stood beside him, helping a younger girl mix paint. "More yellow," he said, decisive. "It makes the light stronger." Jeremy smiled. "He gets that from her," he murmured. Saturday mornings had become ritual. Pancakes shaped like dragons, syrup rivers, coffee that always went cold before they finished laughing. Sometimes, Isabella sat cross-legged on the floor while David taught her blueprint symbols. Triangles for supports, dashed lines for hidden beams. She learned quickly, sketching her own ideas with the same care she once gave to coloring books. Other times, Jeremy burned breakfast trying to multitask while Isabella teased, "You design skyscrapers but can't handle a frying pan?" He'd grin. "My buildings don't flip over." They'd learned rhythm, space, the quiet choreography of a family that didn't rush to be perfect, just present. Jeremy had learned to unclench, to listen, to let small things be small. And Isabella, she'd learned to believe in staying. It happened on an ordinary evening. David was upstairs, supposed to be working on homework, though the faint rustle of paper suggested otherwise. Isabella and Jeremy sat on the couch, the glow of paper lanterns softening the corners of the room. She had paint under her nails and exhaustion in her smile. "I can't believe how fast it's growing," she said. "The program's already at capacity." "You built something real," he said quietly. "People see that." "It's not me, it's the kids. They're—" She paused. "They remind me what hope sounds like." He nodded, watching her as she tucked one leg beneath her, a strand of hair slipping loose. "You still wear that green dress sometimes," he said. She laughed. "It's my lucky one." "Maybe mine too." Just then, a thud sounded from the hallway, then footsteps. David's, light and conspiratorial. He appeared at the doorway holding a large sketchbook. I'm just gonna leave this here." He placed it on the coffee table and vanished before either of them could speak. They exchanged amused glances. Jeremy flipped open the cover. On the first page, in David's uneven handwriting, it read, "Future." Inside were 3 hand-drawn panels. The first, a fancy restaurant, a man and woman sitting awkwardly across a table while a little boy drew on a napkin. The second, an art room glowing by lantern light, rain streaking the windows. The third, blank. Across the top, in neat letters, "Us." Isabella's breath caught. "He drew our story." Jeremy turned the page slowly. He left room for one more. For a long moment, the world felt suspended between breaths. Then Jeremy looked up. "Maybe we should finish it." She met his gaze, heart hammering. "How?" He reached into his pocket. No ring box, no grand gesture, just a folded piece of paper. A sketch. It was the 3 of them again, but this time standing beneath an archway of paintbrushes and blueprint lines, half structure, half imagination. Above them a sign, "New door." He handed it to her. "Draw the next part with me. Not for a night, for a lifetime." Tears pricked her eyes. "Jeremy." "I don't have the right words," he said softly. "But I think I found the right person." She laughed through her tears. "You always were better at blueprints than speeches." "Is that a yes?" She took the sketch, set it beside David's, and picked up a pencil. With careful strokes, she filled in the blank panel. The 3 of them together, hand in hand, walking through a painted door. "Yes," she whispered. Weeks later, the same restaurant where it all began hosted a quiet celebration. No photographers, no announcements, just close friends, a few staff from the art program, and one commissioned painting unveiled near the entrance. The guests clapped softly as the cloth was lifted. The painting glowed under warm light. Jeremy, Isabella, and David laughing together, reflections of candlelight dancing in their eyes. Isabella's brushwork was delicate yet bold, the same balance she brought to everything she touched. On the back of the canvas, in looping handwriting, she'd written, "Sometimes all it takes is someone who's nice." Jeremy stood beside her, hand at the small of her back. "You made us look happy." She smiled. "You are." David ran up, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Daddy, you're not doing your leaving face, right?" Jeremy looked down, smiling. "Not tonight." "Not ever," Isabella added, intertwining her fingers with his. "Never again," he said. And somewhere beyond the window, the city lights shimmered like new stars, each one a door still opening. If you believe kindness can rewrite endings, drop a heart in the comments and tell us, was Isabella's green dress truly lucky or fate? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more beautiful stories.